Welcome on to Hollinger and Duncan's annual playoff outlook, not preview because a preview would be boring. That's what everyone else does. We do outlooks here. Everyone else also fills their head in the screen. We don't bother to do that either on YouTube. This is just a vehicle for you to listen to our voices. We wish we didn't have to show you our faces at all.
As
that
do
said,
you.
please. Please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube if you are following there or in whatever your podcast player is. And before we get into our usual playoff outlook, which is going to be more than just talking about the series and picking them, although we will do our picks eventually, let's talk about some interesting executive moves. You and I have not talked since the surprising news of Calvin Booth and Michael Malone being fired simultaneously in Denver. And Dan noted how rare it is for that axe to fall on the same day for both gentlemen. So what are your thoughts on that? Having worked in a front office, having worked with a variety of coaches, and then some of this reporting, and I'm sure something that's come up in your own conversations about how disjointed things were. Do you believe that this firing was justified for two men who, if you simply analyze their track records, didn't deserve this?
In a way, yes, because you have to be able to work with each other. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's a people business at the end of the day, just like virtually every other business. And the fact that they couldn't do that made everything else toxic. It was like it made the so much harder for the organization to function when you have two kind of disparate
Factions.
Factions. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like shadow governments, but yeah, faction, that's the word. But it's really true. I mean, I've been in some situations that were healthy, some that were less healthy. I don't think any were anywhere near the level that this one allegedly got to. But I've definitely heard stories from other places where it gets like that, and it's just really hard to function as an organization when they not only aren't going to listen to you, but think what you're doing is sabotaging them, right? Like when they're sort of assigning the worst motives to whatever you're doing. It's hard to function that way. When one side thinks you're playing Zeke Naji this way just to make them look like shit, and the other, the other side thinks, what was their complaint? Oh, you're just playing Russell Westbrook, so you can, you can put down our guy Jalen Pickett, and the coaches think that he's just trying to pump up all his young guys who aren't any good. So, and those back and forths to an extent are normal in an organization, but there's a point where it goes from healthy dialogue to just warfare, and I think that's where they were at. So in some ways I admire what Josh Kroenke did. Just like I'm not choosing, just both of you get the hell out, because he didn't want the perception that one of them would quote unquote win.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just right. Like I don't care who started it. Both of you go to your room, like that. that kind of parenting. I mean, and there's a reason, but there's a reason that has to be it ultimately. And yeah, you don't want to, because there's a chance that then whoever had come in, if one of them had been retained, would then inherit the previous faction, and also you just want to provide because he was really dissatisfied with both of them because they couldn't get along.
Yeah.
And part of their resume, as good as it was on paper, was you let it get to this point with the executive. So then, like, we're not going to, Michael Malone, make you the coach / GM if we retain you. There's going to have to be another guy who's brought in. And now if that guy does something that you don't agree with, and like the coach and GM's jobs are different, like there's always going to be a little bit of like a loggerheads between those two because the coach is trying to win the next game. If you give a guy security, hopefully you can kind of get that out of him a little bit, like Will Hardy style. But You're still, the coach wants to play the guys who are going to win, and he believes that's the best way to develop. And I think that's right. But then also the GM has to look out for the long-term health of the franchise. And so if you retain Michael Malone and fire Calvin Booth, the next guy you bring in is going to be like, oh shit, I better not cross Michael Malone like the last guy.
Yeah.
He got
Yeah,
fired
exactly.
for doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Better just do whatever Michael Malone wants, right? So you alluded to having sometimes that obviously weren't this bad. And I know you're not going to want to get into like specific names, but just as an executive, what did that feel like to not be on the same page with your coach?
It's harder, I think, on the executive side because, um, you get back to parenting. Like, what are the rules? Don't fight in front of the kids.
Yeah,
And so you don't want to let on that there is anything amiss, especially in the presence of other people in the organization. So that I think is one of the really tricky parts. And the coaches at some level have more options in terms of, they talk to the press after every game. They can, kind of put in their little spin on things, as events play out a little more easily, I think, because of that.
yeah, and there's also people seem to cry for coaches getting fired more than executives, which I've never understood. I've railed against that many a time, but executives, like, just look at, since Michael Malone was fired, there are 3 coaches who have had their jobs since before the pandemic. Like that, it just is a
Yeah.
profession that turns over constantly, and guys grow up with that. I mean, Michael Malone saw his dad he got a couple of chances as a head man and ended up getting fired. I'm sure Michael Malone and Brendan thought unfairly.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was something about Mike Malone where it seemed like he was just like so defensive all the time. Like he was just so combative. He always seemed like there was something that he was fighting against, and
Mm-hmm.
including his own GM in the end. But there was kind of like an insecurity to him that showed up. And I think with David Edelman, they want something a little bit different. But executives, they stick around a little bit longer, but also like they're the ones managing up who, in theory, have more of a relationship with the owner. And you are still limited that, firing the coach, particularly because Michael Malone probably had more stature than
Mm-hmm.
Calvin Booth, having been there longer. Like you could, yeah, you in theory are the boss. You could fire the coach, but that also really reflects poorly on you. So you
Yeah.
end up with this kind of no-win situation. So I completely support what Josh Kroenke did in the end, although he did take responsibility for letting it get to this point, which I think is something that he should take responsibility for.
Yeah. Yeah. And the one thing I'll add, no shit, the coaches are insecure. I mean, you look at this only makes things worse that their shelf life is so short. It only makes them more insecure, right? They're
Yeah.
they don't they're not thinking about developing a guy for 3 years from now, because that, they don't think they're going to be the ones coaching them. So it
Yeah, but
is
if they
more
do develop the guy, they will be. That's what they don't quite understand. but
sometimes.
that's in the case of yeah. I mean, JB Pickerstaff did a great job at developing his guys, and then he
Yeah.
was he was ousted. So this is the quote from Gail Benson when she completed her exhaustive search for Joe Dumars and are going to be hiring him. David Griffin was fired.
Yeah.
As we went through this past season, I gave it a lot of careful thought and reflection relative to how we need to move this organization forward and what kind of leadership that will take. Joe was someone I was very familiar with, having dealt with him over the past few years at league meetings. My decision today was not hastily made and not without spending valuable time talking to players, coaches, and league officials. That input was critical. I'm excited to get started in providing any and all of the resources, as I've done in the past to the team, to get us back to winning. What do you make of that hiring? The Griffin firing we can talk about in a second, but that hiring in New Orleans.
Is he like a Colangelo and we don't know it? Is there like another branch of the tree or somehow or that.
Well, he's from Louisiana, John. Don't you know that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, he went to McNeese State.
McNeese State legend. Exactly. Um, it did seem from that press release that and was there maybe a little push from the league office on this one, but I mean the whole New Orleans situation is like the press release that they basically sent out without intending to is don't bother taking us seriously. We're not like a real organization. Everyone else in the West, exhale. Don't worry about us. We're just going to keep being cheap and doing whatever we're doing and see you in the lottery.
Elaborate.
I mean, the unseriousness of the search, the fact that they're trying to retain Willie Green apparently, and that one of the things that like they're firing David Griffin because he wanted to fire Willie Green. Like, okay. And David Griffin's record was imperfect, let's say. So that decision after year 5 or 6 or whatever it was, I think you could go either way on that one, and that's fine. But then to insist on keeping a coach who was pretty clearly ineffective and force that on whoever is next. And I think they still haven't dealt with some of the kind of issues just underlying the whole team, which is, they're not going to spend any money. They have the smallest or one of the smallest staffs in the league. And
the arena is bad.
The arena is, yeah. It's either that or Philly is the worst arena in the league, and Philly's at least working on getting a new one. So no, the only reason, I like going to Smoothie King Center personally because that hallway is so narrow that you can always talk to people because you can just freaking trap them. So it's like an airplane corridor, Anyway, but yeah, they need a new arena among other things. I'm not sure how that works out. There's the whole thing with the football guys, like kind of overseeing the Pelican. It's just a mess there.
Yeah, I would push back a little bit on Willie Green being proven to be ineffective. He's done a good job, I think, up until this year. And yeah, he deserves some blame for how poorly they played, even in their limited windows of health. But I don't think it's like, he's not somewhere like, oh, it's so obvious he should be fired. Like, I probably would do it, but just see, because I don't think he's proven to be, a top tier coach. And I like to just try to keep going for that guy. But it seems pretty clear that this search, she thought really, really hard about whether to hire this one guy or not.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I had heard things going back to the last time that Griffin was purportedly in trouble. And then he saved himself with a great 21 draft and also saved himself with, frankly, what was a bad trade to get CJ McCollum.
Yeah.
And then a terrible extension.
The extension was killer. Yeah.
As well. Yeah. That was probably the biggest, especially then they had to trade Brandon Ingram as well. Like their finances are perpetually near the tax. And even though they're never going to go into the tax and they've gotten out of it with trades the last couple of years, it does make a difference to the bottom line of a team like the Pelicans to be operating close to the tax as opposed to, 15 million under the tax. Like that's basically 15 million of either profit or loss for a team like that. So I think I'd heard last time that Joe Dumars would be the pick if David Griffin got let go 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so just to not even do any interview, fine. You want to have Joe as the front runner? Sure. Like I understand that, but that's just like, at least do some other interviews, like get some other ideas. Maybe you could even like bring someone in who could be a number 2, who would then, Joe's 61, maybe be an heir apparent or something like that too. Like that, it just is. And especially for Joe Dumars, I liken this hiring to Jeannie Buss hiring Rob Pelinka or Magic Johnson, right? Where it's just, it's a security blanket, but Yeah, but except you're in New Orleans, so the fact that you're in LA is not going to bail you out like it did with LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
And then even the Luka trade, they were able to make that trade without talking to Luka because they're in LA and they just assumed he was going to stay because they're the Lakers, which the Milwaukee
Yeah.
Bucks wouldn't have been able to do. So,
Correct. Yeah.
but yeah, so there's no LA limelight gonna bail you out for this uninspired decision.
Uninspired. That's good. Good description there. Yeah. But yeah, I think the rest of the West is just exhaling. Like, okay, like this conference is so cutthroat. Like, at least there's one team I don't really have to worry about.
Yeah, it would seem so. I thought they were going to be pretty good last year, but yeah, it seems like they're going into a new era. Well, of course, you will have to worry about them once they get Cooper Flag and see if they can ruin the career
Oh
of a
my
fourth
goodness.
generational superstar in the last 20 years. Okay,
Wow.
we can also there's this reporting that they uh ownership might direct Joe Dumars to trade Zion. That's fascinating. We'll save
Mm,
that for another time when we're doing more
yeah.
offseason stuff because that would be really, really interesting. But we don't have time for
Mhm.
that right now. What we do have a lot of time for is our playoff outlook. I mean, these playoffs, I don't know about you, John. I'm more excited for this first round than I can think any that I can remember.
We could have a situation where all 8 first round series, uh, the team with home court advantage did not win the regular season series against their opponent.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I hadn't thought of that.
Dallas would have to advance in the West, and the Hawks would have to win on Friday against Chicago or Miami, and then we would get that.
So, I mean, I would say 4 series are pretty much I would say 3 series I think are, pretty much like Dunzo gentleman sweep type of things. So I don't know if I want to focus that much on that. Obviously, the 1-8
Yeah.
in both conferences and then Boston and Orlando. But the other 3 series in the West
Wow.
and Milwaukee and Indiana too, I would say, are
Eh.
all 4 of those. Okay, okay, we'll talk about that. All 4 of those series are basically pure toss-ups to me.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so let's start here. What is the single most interesting series to you?
Well, I know which conference it's in. I have a hard time deciding between the Golden State series and the Lakers series. I actually will say the Lakers series. I think Lakers Minnesota is fascinating. Um, Lakers star power, what Luka did to Minnesota last year in the conference finals versus Minnesota's size, depth, toughness. Minnesota went 17-4 in their last 21 games. Um, I think there are some things there that maybe played LA's advantage a little bit, but I I think this is going to be a very interesting long series. And uh I don't know. I think people are just expecting like, oh yeah, Lakers. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that one.
No, I think this one is a pure toss-up, and I will hold my official picks in advance. We'll do ours now, but I haven't done my full show with Danny. We're a little behind on that this year.
Okay.
So, in part because Golden State was playing at home last night, so we didn't have a chance to do as much last night. But yeah, I think this one is like a pure toss-up. I mean, and so many incredible themes like Luca versus Gobert, Gobert versus another 5-out team as well. But of course, this is a group in Minnesota that has a lot more depth guarding on the perimeter than his Utah teams did that got beat by Luca. I mean, this is the third time Gobert has gone up against Luca in a playoff series now.
And
And
then
yeah,
you say a 5-out Laker team, but that requires Dorian Finney-Smith to play 5. So then,
yeah, or Hachimura or LeBron or whoever you want to
yeah,
say. Yeah, and the Lakers, it's fascinating because they're not going to play Jackson Hayes that much. Probably, I would think. I think they might even struggle to score when he's on the floor, and I don't think he gives them that much defense. I mean, they need to get some minutes out of him to be sure, but I think you know the big thing that's interesting to me is Minnesota's offense going against the Lakers defense, because they don't have great rim protection, but JJ Redick's approach has been really packing the paint, making catches difficult, double teaming, and then they do have good size up and down their group, even though they're not necessarily, they don't have that one awesome rim protector. And so, like, who's going to guard Anthony Edwards? I guess that'll probably be Dorian Finney-Smith. And then the Wolves don't have a ton of spacing. They could, in theory, beat them up on the boards too. But I think that end of the floor is probably going to determine things to me, of just like,
Yeah.
can Minnesota score? Because this isn't on paper a great Lakers team, but the Wolves aren't a great offense necessarily either. They don't have great spacing, and the Lakers have kind of punched above their weight just by executing and taking away opponents' strengths.
Yeah. And then you wonder how much of that translates into a playoff series too, when it does tend to descend more into one-on-one battles, and the Lakers have a lot of shitty one-on-one defenders.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they have do have a couple of pigeons for Anthony Edwards to go after, and we saw Anthony Edwards really hurt the Denver Nuggets in that respect a year ago. And so like they had Murray, they had Porter Jr. Like, in the end, the Nuggets just weren't willing to live with that matchup. They double teamed, and that really compromised their defense. Is that going to be what the Lakers are going to have to do as well? Like, what are they going to do when Edwards is guarded by Luka? Because they don't have Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford behind Luka Doncic, behind Luka Doncic this year. Like, they don't have that guy who's going to bother Edwards at the basket if he can get there. So that's going to be fascinating. Like, they're going to have to double Edwards is my biggest question of that series.
Another thing I would worry about a little bit if I was LA. If this is a long series, Game 5, 1 day off. Game 6, 1 day off. Probably a day game, 3:30 Eastern time, Game 7. With Minnesota having the advantage in depth, physicality, size, like, are the Lakers just going to be? Are they going to be like the Nuggets last year, where they're just toast by Game 7?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, those flights are very long, from Minnesota to LA. Now, in the beginning part of the series, the Lakers have the advantage with a bunch of 2 days off.
Exactly. Yeah.
But my other concern too is, well, actually, we'll get to this maybe a little bit later in one of our other categories. This isn't even the most interesting series to me. That's Clippers Denver. Denver is absolutely fascinating. I mean, just so many themes. Zubats versus Jokic is huge, and Kawhi Leonard has been playing at an unbelievable level the last 20 games or so. James Harden in the playoffs, but James Harden in the playoffs, it's like a pretty easy matchup, actually. Which he's usually failed going up against, Boston and Golden State type of teams, right? And so, or Miami, right? Like, those are the teams that bother. Like, this is a Nuggets defense that has not been very good, that he should have guys that he can go at one-on-one. And then there's also the problem, though, the Clippers don't have a ton of spacing. And Chris Dunn, what his role is going to be in the series. What happens if Zubats gets into foul trouble, and Nikola Jokic, like, can he score one-on-one against Zubats? Like, Jamal Murray back from the hamstring, like, is that gonna, who are they gonna put on Jamal Murray, and like, how are they gonna handle the Murray actions with Jokic as well? Like, all of that is going to be absolutely fascinating. The last time these two teams matched up, much different personnel. It was basically just Kawhi and Zubats, the only ones who were there, and they had a much different coach. Now they have Ty Lue, against Nikola Jokic in the playoffs. That'll be absolutely fascinating.
Yes.
This series has, and of course, can Kawhi make it through healthy is another aspect as well. Yeah, this is just such a good set. I mean, my fear is that this series, like, Aaron Gordon will hurt his calf again, or like, Kawhi won't be able to finish. That's what's going to decide it.
Yeah.
But if these teams can both make it through healthy, I mean, this is just a monster series, especially because Dan did his adjusting for playoff rotations, and the Clippers using only lineups that have players on the floor that that will likely appear in this series. The Clippers have a plus 15.8 net rating
Mm-hmm.
with those guys on the floor. Their regular season is plus 4.7, and the
Yeah.
Nuggets go from plus 4.4 to plus 8.8. But of course, when Jokic is on the floor, they're a monster, and their offense is a complete monster as well. So this is, I mean, this one, I don't know who the hell I'm going to pick in this one, but it's going to be amazing.
I share your enthusiasm for the series. I do think the Clippers have a little bit more of an advantage. Um, I just think the team they're playing on the floor right now is really good. I think it's the fourth best team that like we've had 3 teams dominate the whole season. I think the Clippers are number 4.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly look good in that Golden State game, and they just have a lot of size, a lot of defense. The Nuggets don't really have a group that can take the advantage of James Harden all that well, I would say either. Maybe you try to get Harden onto Murray, and then you run the action with Jokic and Murray, that type of stuff. And Harden is actually not terrible as a help defender, which he might be in that role some. But yeah, I mean,
Can
yeah.
can the Clippers play Kawhi on Jokic in fourth quarters and have Zubats as an off-ball roamer?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of looks that they can go to for sure. Um, Least interesting series in the first round?
The DeAndre Hunter George Niang revenge series.
If that's even what it is, right? I mean, I actually think the Bulls, Cleveland would be, some nice cotton candy, empty calories,
Mm-hmm.
running gun, big
Yeah.
scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the Hawks, I mean, seeing them last night, they're totally uninteresting. I mean, I probably got to go Boston, Orlando, just because it's going to be one of these series where Orlando's just never going to be able to score. And maybe they can drag Boston down in the mud for a little bit. But I like that because, like, Cleveland, I'm interested to see what they look like in the playoffs. Are they going to be this team that they've been all year? Boston, we know what they are. They're tested. They've just got every advantage against Orlando. I mean, that was, an easy kind of 5-gamer. I could see Cleveland just sort of struggling a little bit, not hitting their shots, like kind of needing to get their rhythm, sort of like OKC was, even though they
That New
throttled
Orleans series?
New
Yeah.
Orleans in the end. Like
Yeah.
at the beginning of that series, it was a little tough
Mm-hmm.
for them, and then obviously they
Yeah.
lost in the second round. But yeah, I would say Boston, Orlando to me. If Orlando were healthy, I would be more interested in that series. But not having Jalen Suggs and anyone else who can shoot the ball is a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
Individual player matchup you are most interested in watching in the first round.
Nikola Jokic versus Ivica Zubats.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be a great one. Like the beauty of Jokic, though, particularly now that he's been more aggressive shooting the 3, is that there just is no way to defend him. Yeah, all right. You know what? Ivica Zubats is maybe one of like the 3 guys who might give him a little bit of trouble on just a straight post up. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll go to the Murray and Jokic actions, and now you got to take away the pocket pass to Jokic. Or you can just put Jokic at the elbow and run a bunch of screening actions against James Harden, who's not going to switch very well, or Norman Powell, who also really struggles to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big issue as well with Jokic. Or now he can pick and pop all the way out to the 3-point line. Zubats has to get out there too. But as we noted, Ty Lue has a lot of different options. Would he even consider playing Ben Simmons instead of Chris Dunn and switching
Mm-hmm.
with Kawhi and Ben Simmons and then putting Zubats off the line and just saying, hey, you know what? Like, we're going to have James Harden and Kawhi like bash their heads against the wall and we won't have any spacing, but we think those guys can score well enough. We're going to stop you on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we've seen Denver struggle, it's been more when their offense can't stay on time. So I probably would try to lean defense against them and just trust Kawhi and Harden and Norm Powell to figure it out, or Zubats in the
Yeah.
post if he's not being guarded by Jokic, or maybe even if he is. For me, it's Steph versus Amen Thompson. I mean, Steph versus the whole Rockets team.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
go ahead on
That
that
was
one. Yeah,
that was
that's
the
an
next
awesome
one on my
too.
list after that
Yeah.
game in the last week of the regular season, especially where Amen Thompson completely shut down Curry and Houston's just athleticism and size and energy just overwhelmed Golden State. Um, I do think Golden State will win that series, but there's this scenario playing out in my head where I'm thinking to myself, like, what if I'm wrong and they just get punked in 5 games? Like
Completely. Yeah.
I
Danny and I
cannot
did
rule
do the
that one
preview for
out.
that. No,
Yeah.
not at all. And I
Mhm.
tried not to overreact to what I saw in person, where Golden State just looked so old and slow and
Mhm.
overwhelmed, because I do think like that Golden State's defense is still probably the equal of Houston's, and they have a better offense. And so now that's in the half court, right? Can Houston just their floor game, offensive rebounding, forcing turnovers, transition, can that overwhelm Houston? Or Golden State now forces a bunch of turnovers with Butler and Gary Payton there as well, and so
Yeah.
maybe Golden State can actually come close to winning the possession battle. Uh, so
There's another matchup in that series though.
okay,
Alperen Şengün against Draymond Green.
oh yeah. No, those guys got into it. And there are so many awesome matchups there.
Yeah.
Udoka, like Dylan Brooks going up against the Warriors.
Mhm.
You've got Steven Adams, Draymond in that series too.
Yeah.
Uh, remember that 9 years ago in that classic OKC series, which I just said was the best series. Actually, my second favorite series in the entire
Mhm.
time I've been doing this show.
That's
Yeah,
right. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. I'd forgotten about that one. Yeah.
Another one I had is Gobert versus Luca, and that's just going to be an awesome one too. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. Any others that pop out to you?
Uh Cade Cunningham against OG Anunoby.
Yeah, but unfortunately, OG Anunoby has Carl Towns behind
Well, that could be a little bit of an equalizer there. Yeah.
him. Yeah. Well, I also
Mm.
think I think they'll probably start Bridges on OG. They've generally gone with Bridges. Like Bridges has faced the most screens of anybody in the league, the most
Mhm.
isolations of anyone in the league. I think maybe not isolations, but definitely pick and roll screens as
Yeah.
the on ball guy.
Hmm.
I would, yeah. So I want to save that one actually.
Okay.
The star player who has the toughest matchup.
I mean, Banchero. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, and that's going to be tough for him. Although unfortunately, part of the matchup he faces is his own teammates, and the fact that he can't space the floor at all. But yeah, he really, the way that Banchero works best is running pick and roll against a smaller, weaker defender, and I would imagine that Boston will just be willing to switch whoever onto him and then load up, and he's not going to be able to do anything.
Mhm.
Boston also does a really good job of not fouling, which is really his best. I mean, I would actually say I think Banchero has a little bit more of an advantage than Franz. I think Franz would be an even more trouble because he's not even really like a good isolation player, and they're going to force him to play iso ball.
Mhm.
And then if he does get all the way to the rim, there's going to be Kristaps Porzingis there, who I think can do a pretty good job against him. I think it's Steph against Houston, though. I was
So,
saying this
yep.
to Danny. I can't recall in the entire time that Steph Curry has been in the playoffs a team that had as many awesome defenders to throw at Steph as this Houston team.
Yeah. When you like you probably going to start with Thompson, but then Dylan Brooks is going to come in and be all physical and pick him up full court, and then they can still come to Eason off the bench, right?
Yeah.
I
Van
mean,
Vliet has a ton of experience playing against Steph too.
yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, and that's I think even that, like, he did pretty well in that game on Sunday. Now Steph at least has Steven Adams and probably Şengün that he can get a screen from their man and maybe get open. That's going to be a huge tete-a-tete in that series of just, can the Rockets keep those guys out of the actions? How are the Warriors going to get those guys into the action? But hey, I mean, in the last game, it didn't matter who the screener was. Amen Thompson just apparated through the screen.
Right.
Um, Star player with the and also John Morant going against OKC, especially with possibly a sprained ankle, or it would be
Well, I was
DeRozan,
gonna,
Zach LaVine,
I
whoever
was
goes
gonna,
up against
yeah, I
OKC.
was gonna say Bane going against OKC.
Bane, I think, is a little easier just because he's kind of like a spot up guy. He makes quick decisions. Like he's not going to
Hmm.
be trying to isolate as much. So that's why I picked Ja, because Ja
Hmm.
is like, he's got to get in the lane and finish against those twin towers too. Let's see here. Star player with the easiest matchup.
Uh, I'm not sure if I would say this about Anthony Edwards. I mean, like it's because the things the Lakers do schematically, I think, are gonna, even though it's like one on one, there's not anyone who's like, ooh, I'm so scared. Um, so who? I mean, if it's the Bulls, Donovan Mitchell, right?
Yeah, or
Mm.
Shea going up against the Kings,
Yeah,
uh, or even Memphis has nobody to guard him at this point. I guess Scottie Pippen Jr. would be the one guy, but Scottie Pippen Jr. is going to fall out of the game if he has to guard Shea. Um, and Scottie Pippen Jr. does a great job, but he's also 6'1", like that, and
yeah.
they don't really have a ton behind him. Um, yeah, I would also say Tyrese Halliburton.
That was, yeah. I was about to mention him for sure.
Yeah, because the Milwaukee Bucks just don't really have a perimeter defender that's going to bother him much. And then also the Bucks kind of play in a drop coverage largely. I'm interested to see how the Bucks are going to try to defend. They tried last year going Brook Lopez on Siakam. Siakam beat them up with some mid rangers early in that series. But you don't want Brook Lopez in a drop coverage against Tyrese Halliburton either. But then as Doc Rivers to me has been too quick to go away from Brook Lopez. But
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Bobby Portis is not going to be the answer because then
yeah,
I mean, as good as the Pacers are, and you think of them as running gun and stuff, like they kill you at the rim. That's the biggest thing. Like the Bucks at least need to try to take that away. If this Pacers team beats them from the outside, if Andrew Nemhart's gonna shoot 9 threes, like or TJ McConnell, like okay, fine, like I'll let him do that. This is a good one. Best coaching matchup.
first one that comes to mind for me is Udoka and Kerr.
Yeah,
Well, especially because they have pieces they can play with, and it's a relatively even matchup on paper, even if you'd probably give Golden State a little bit of an advantage. So there's more optionality there. Like, as opposed to, like, there are some other teams where, like, well, the coach only has 6 players who are playable. So like, the hell you want him to do? But this one, I think he has some options. I think watching Chris Finch and JJ Redick in his first playoff series is going to be interesting.
yes, yeah, that's gonna be fun. I mean, Reddick has been fantastic this year for sure, but I want to see that. Chris Finch, I think, is an underrated coach, and there are a lot of different things that those two teams match up so differently, but also
Yeah.
have like such obvious weaknesses on both ends that who's going to be able to exploit that, who's going to be able to hide that, I think will be absolutely fascinating. I mean, we've also got Ty Lue, a top 5 coach, going up against David Edelman, who's coached 3 regular season games. And I don't know that it's the best coaching matchup because Edelman doesn't have any kind of a track record, but it's one of the ones I'm most interested to see,
Oh yeah.
particularly because again that is just a series with so many great players and big pieces, but also those are teams that have pretty obvious weaknesses at various points as well. And then I'm also interested to see Tibbs JB too. Tibbs
Yes.
really totally kind of depantsed JB 2 years ago, as the Knicks did to the entire Cleveland team, and now JB his team's a little bit limited. I'm kind of worried about that one. I don't know that it's going to be his fault that they're going to lose or anything, but I see that series as maybe being more of a mismatch than some people do.
Right.
Biggest coaching mismatch.
Well, if we get Mark Daigneault against Doug Christie, I would say that would be the The clear choice for number one, right?
Yeah, Doug Christie, your 26th rated coach is with an anchor on his feet,
Yeah.
heading downward. I don't know. But, I mean, like he if they have a semi-respectable show, I mean, well, number one, they would have to make it. I mean, I think Memphis should be able to beat the Kings. But the Kings like have enough talent that they can kind of beat anyone on a given night. Not they wouldn't beat anyone in a playoff series, but
Yeah.
I'd be worried about them if they end
Yeah.
up winning as
Yeah.
Memphis. And
No,
then
I mean the thing you're worried about if you're a Kings fan is like the Kings luck their way into the 8th seed. Oklahoma City mails in game 3, so the Kings win it like by 20, so everyone's feeling pretty good. So they're like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, let's bring him back.
I would say the other one that's the biggest mismatch to me that we know is going to happen is Missoula versus Mosley. And I do think Jamal Mosley is a very solid regular season coach. I don't think the Magic's personnel screams second in defense, but
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really care for some of the stuff that Mosley did in the playoffs last year. I thought he played a lot of guys who shouldn't have been played, like Markel Fultz was getting regular minutes and then was
Yeah.
immediately out of the league for most of the year. But the problem Mosley has that I think I'll end up giving him a pass is number one, his stars aren't good enough to just beat any of Boston's guys one on one. Number two, he has no shooting. And then number three, some of the guys off the bench that he's going to have to bring in. I mean, fuck, he's starting Corey Joseph, and it's the right
Right.
decision.
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they have so many holes. Like I if they get swept or lose in 5, like it's not going to be Mosley's fault. But if I had to just say, ranking the playoff coaches, he would probably be at the bottom for me, and Missoula would be at the top.
He, if you noticed last night, I was surprised he didn't cut the rotation more. He played 10 guys in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, at least, but I feel better about that because guys 4 through 10 or sorry, guys 5 through 10 on this team are basically all equally flawed, other than maybe Jonathan Isaac is the
I,
only like credible backup that they have at this point.
I don't know. Like when I was shocked when Caleb Houston checked in.
He's their best shooter.
That is wow. I mean, that's yeah. That is why Orlando will not win the series. Yeah.
The series that has the most variables to you.
I think it's that Lakers Wolves series.
How so?
Just the questions of whether Minnesota can kind of wear them down and pound them. The questions about how Minnesota deals with Luka and what happens differently than a year ago. The questions with Redick in his first series. We haven't talked a lot about LeBron, who was was really good in the second half of the season, but I think has ceded some control obviously to Luka, and then weirdly the Lakers on off numbers with LeBron this year are still like pretty bad, and like even like post trade the LeBron Luka lineups haven't been anything. So that's been interesting, but there are some probably nerdy explanations for that, but it's been an interesting thing to watch. And then Minnesota, because they have 8 guys and they have a lot of flexibility to go in and out with different groupings that are roughly similar in just the quality of the player. And so it's just about what matchup are you going for. I think there's a lot to unpack there too.
LeBron is fascinating because, and I think he's actually now in the offensive role that he needs to be in because they just desperately need him defensively. Like he's going to have to guard Julius Randle, or he's going to have to guard Gobert and be their primary help defender. He's going to have to be great on the defensive glass. And then maybe he ends up kind of being their closer a little bit. Although Minnesota has options to guard him. Is that going to be Julius Randle or Naz Reid? Like, are they going to get matched on LeBron? Because if not, then Minnesota likes to go with McDaniels on Edwards, or sorry, on Luka, And then, so
Mm-hmm.
is Edwards going to guard LeBron? Like that's going to be
Yeah.
kind of like I do think LeBron will have moments with some matchups that he can take advantage of. To me, though, the series with the most variables is Denver Clippers, just because of the Clippers old guy. Like James Harden is the ultimate
Yeah.
inconsistent playoff performer. Kawhi never makes it through the playoffs healthy. Obviously, like Denver as a coach, he's coached 3 games. You don't know what he's going to do in a playoff setting. And then Milwaukee, Indiana, obviously Lillard with the
Mm-hmm.
possible return from the DVT, which I don't put a lot of stock in. I think like
Yeah.
mathematically 4 to 6 weeks is if it's not like a huge clot and it's more distal, being further away from the heart, which this is in the calf, then in theory you could come back in 4 to 6 weeks. The research I've done indicates that once he actually stops the blood thinners, which is what prevents you from obviously taking contact because you might have some internal bleeding or something that could be a big problem, that it only takes 42 to 72 hours for those medicines to clear your system. And he has been like doing workouts and stuff. So if the clot does end up being gone, if he can stop those medications, like maybe he could come back. But then, what is that going to do to Milwaukee's defense as well? So, I mean, that is a huge
Mm-hmm.
variable as well in that series. This is always a fun one. John, who in the playoff crucible will survive and which rotation players will turn to ash in the playoff crucible?
Jonathan Kaminga.
Well, I think he's not just ash, he's been like blown out of the crucible as ashes by Steve Kerr already. No, I think they're gonna need to go to him because this is gonna be a hard series. And there are actually other guys I think who may end up having a problem. Gary Payton II or Quentin Post might just get beat up too much by Steven Adams.
Mm-hmm.
And because like that's another interesting thing, right? Post takes Kuminga's spot too. It's Post, Moses Moody, obviously Guy Santos, who
Yeah.
I think he may actually be able to exist okay in this series because Houston doesn't have like a lot of isolation guys that are going to go right at him, and he at least hustles and can give him some rebounding and stuff. And yeah, and Moses Moody's the other guy who's taken those minutes. Uh, but I think Kuminga, like, they just are going to need someone who can run and finish the rim. He's traditionally played pretty well against Houston. He could take advantage maybe of the Rockets not having like awesome rim protecting centers. Here's one for you that I you're not going to want to hear. Mike
Mm-hmm.
Conley. The Lakers,
Yeah.
yeah, the Lakers are going to go at him every time, try to get the switch with Luka, and basically whenever he gets on LeBron. I mean, he's going to have to guard probably Austin Reeves at the start. That's one of the things that makes the Lakers so difficult is, do you have 3 perimeter defenders who
Mm-hmm.
can deal with Reeves, LeBron, and Luka? So Conley probably has to start on Reeves. Reeves can go through smaller guys, get fouls, particularly if he catches the ball in a closeout situation. And so I think they may just end up having to go DiVincenzo more
Yeah.
in that series, and
Yeah. I
just to,
think.
to like not have any guys that you can just go right at is going to be really important.
Yeah, Mike either ends up as a token starter in that series, or they make an adjustment after like game 2 or something and switch it so that Mike is playing most of his minutes against Laker bench units and can play against Jordan Goodwin and guys like that.
Now, I do think he is important because the way that the Lakers are going to play is they're going to really load up. They're going to force Minnesota to beat them over the top. They're probably going to double team. They're going to front in the post. They're going to take the ball out of guys' hands. And Mike, as a spot up shooter, he's maybe not as good as DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo, if he can take some really deep threes, can
Yeah.
cause problems for the Lakers. But Conley moves the ball really well, and that's the biggest thing that Minnesota struggles with. And so you're going to need to beat this Laker team with the pass to some degree. I don't know that Minnesota has the best personnel to do that. So he has an important offensive role, but I think defensively it could get difficult. Although DiVincenzo, he's kind of overrated, I think, on defense. Like that, you can go at him in the post. He fouls some. He gambles a lot. So I don't know if he's a panacea for them either. Anyone else that popped out to you of rotation players that might end up on the
Yeah,
fine here.
Corey Joseph. I think Orlando's just going to end up not being able to score and have to play Cole
Yeah,
Anthony
they
the
just
whole game.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah, especially after Cole played so well last night. Russell Westbrook,
Yeah. Well,
Ty
that.
Lue coaching revenge game. Yeah, for those of you who don't know this, this is when coaches. I mean, if you talk to coaches in private, I know you have, John. Just the way that they will shit on their own players that they don't like, and you know that they are just absolutely licking their chops to play that guy and take advantage of all the weaknesses that opposing coaches exploited about that guy when they were on their team.
Right.
And I'm guessing Ty Lue will be quite eager to do that to Russell Westbrook.
Yeah. Yeah, this could be savage, and we may see. I mean, we'll see if Jalen Pickett ends up just taking those minutes.
Speaking of the Lakers series, Jordan Goodwin, Dalton Connect, Jared Vanderbilt, Jackson Hayes. Connect has been kind of on the fringes of things. They may end up needing him to shoot, but
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt and Goodwin has made a few shots. He's also worked as like a role man, working with Luka sometimes. But anytime one of those guys is on the floor, Minnesota's going to just either help off of them, stash their worst guy on them. And I think the Lakers, their absolute best lineup, right? Rui, DFS, LeBron, Luka, Reeves, that can probably
Yeah.
hang. But I think that those other guys, JJ Redick's going to be wishing he had a little bit more. Gabe Vincent at least gives him 6 the way he's been shooting the ball. Although whether Gabe Vincent can guard Anthony Edwards would be a very interesting question for me. And that's
Yeah.
that's
I
going to
think
be fascinating. Like
I think I
I'm
think Vincent.
very worried about that soft underbelly of the Lakers.
Yeah, I think Vincent takes him to like 5.2. But yeah, I agree with your general point. I mean, once they get into those second groups, like how many minutes can Reddick play these guys each night? And when you get
Yeah.
late in the
And that's where
series
the advantage
again,
of
yeah,
the advantage early for the Lakers is go ahead and play LeBron 43 minutes. Also, like if Luka has to play that many minutes, like what's he going to look like on defense? And I think Minnesota is going to try to really tire him out on defense too. Like we're
yeah,
definitely going to have a couple of games in this series where the storyline is, man, Luka was just awful on defense, and that's why they lost.
mm-hmm.
Any others that come to mind for you?
You see, I could say like half of Milwaukee's team, but they have to play somebody. Like I just don't know. Like I just don't know where they if they don't have Lillard, like some of these rotation decisions are just like what like I don't know, what do you even do?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the remember the Milwaukee depth that you were shitting on so much, and now they've won 8 straight. Those guys look pretty good. But remember their superstar that I was shitting on in top 10 players. He's looked pretty
Yeah.
good in the last 8 games too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I do think I obviously they're better with Lillard. I think in a playoff setting you can load up a little bit more on Giannis, and it's just too large of a burden for him. But I do think there's a little bit of Ewing theory. Like Lillard is just so bad on defense that he
Mm-hmm.
just kind of takes the air out of your sails on that end. I mean, we didn't mention Giannis for star who has the easiest matchup. I think he's. I mean, I guess they're going to put Turner on him some, or they try Siakam. He's a little bit too small. Like Giannis can kind of go through him. They don't have any threes that could really guard him either.
Yeah.
So I expect him to have a monster series.
Hmm.
Going back to the rotation players, I think that JB Bickerstaff will be going more with Isaiah Stewart than Jalen Duren as that series goes on. I think that Jalen Duren trying to play pick and roll defense against Jalen Brunson and also having to guard Towns as well is going to just be too difficult. And I think Stewart can even maybe do some switching in the late clock. He's got the mobility to get out on Towns if needed, because I don't think necessarily they're going to go with the put the center on a wing. approach. Like, I don't know that they really have the personnel to do that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe because I don't think you want like Tobias Harris trying to guard Carl Anthony Towns and then switching on to Brunson either. Like, the whole point of doing that is so you can switch. You could go Asar, but then who's going to be just the main matchup on Brunson? They don't have anybody else to do that in the starting lineup, I would say either. And particularly now when they bring in Malik Beasley. So
Yeah.
I think they're just going to need more versatility and more pick and roll defensive craft than Duran can provide.
That's an interesting one because Duran to me has been really good this year,
Yeah.
but in this
He is good.
again,
He is better than Stewart on offense, though, which is maybe their bigger problem will be just that they can't score. That might be the
but
bigger.
the playoffs get so specific this way, you know.
Yeah, it
Uh,
does.
Ron Holland is a guy I think we might not see much of, even though I liked
Yeah,
how he played late in the year. I just don't know, with Asar being back in the lineup, with Detroit needing to manufacture as many points as they can. I mean, I guess they might have Ivy back too. Am I reading that right? So
that would shock me. There's
okay,
no. I mean, maybe like if they're down, I don't think so. Like they number one, if they're down, they wouldn't risk him. Like he's got a
yeah,
great future. He's extension eligible. Like for him to have not played at all, coming back from a broken leg, I mean that's tough. Like if he had been able to play a couple of games here beforehand, Paul George style, okay. But yeah, that would maybe it might be the type of thing where they give him a few minutes or something. But I counting on him, I think would be he's not going to enter into my analysis too much. I would say. Pacers backup center Thomas Bryant. Don't know about that one, particularly if Lillard becomes available. They just go Toppin and Siakam and just try to run the Bucks out of the gym.
yeah, I think you have to do that, especially because like you're not going to put Thomas Bryant on Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably, even if he's not guarding Giannis, they probably need to match up Turner's minutes with Giannis. Deep
Uh,
rotation players. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, this fits into your next question, so go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the deep rotation players who could emerge.
We might see some Jarris Walker.
Yeah, I had him on my list too. Like Rick really doesn't trust him,
Mm-hmm.
but it's particularly if they just can't slow down Giannis at all, they might just have to go that route. I mean, he at least he's the only player who in theory has the physical characteristics to guard Giannis, but um, also he's not really much of a shooter. And yeah, it's if you have to go to that, I thought of it too, just because like I looked at their depth chart. I'm like, well, this is looking pretty barren here. And they're, Giannis going to get guys in foul trouble too. Yeah, it could happen. Simone Fontecchio, I think they're just going to
Yeah,
need someone who can shoot the ball from that position. I think
I
if Holland gets excised, which I like Holland, like maybe he'll just be able to do some stuff in the second unit, get out in transition, and they can win some games with their energy and athleticism. So I'm not saying for sure he's going to be out of it, but Fontecchio to me, like that, Detroit is still a little light on guys who can shoot the ball there. He's got some defensive versatility.
I mean he might take minutes from Hardaway too. Like Hardaway like hasn't really been good. Like nobody's really talking about it. He just keeps starting and playing a bunch of minutes, and it's okay.
Yeah, he definitely is sort of on the boat that's being lifted by the rising tide without really doing any paddling.
Yeah,
And
that's a good way to put it.
Peyton Watson, I think, is going to have to play a fair amount.
I was gonna say Jalen Pickett from Denver,
Yep,
but yeah,
he was on my list too. If Westbrook is going to be minimized, like Pickett can at least shoot the three ball. Now, the one reason they may need Westbrook is just they don't have anyone who can defend one-on-one on the perimeter. Like Westbrook may need to just guard James Harden because
yep,
uh and that's why I think they might need Watson too, particularly because I don't think there's going to be a DeAndre Jordan series. Zeke Naji can't really play center. So I think they're going to just go Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson together. Michael Malone was not a big believer in Peyton Watson. I would imagine that David Adelman is a little bit more. I think he's going to go a little bit more towards some of these younger players. And Watson also can switch out on the perimeter and guard. Like they'll do a lot of switching with that group. I am concerned though that Pickett, if he gets switched on to James Harden, that James Harden is just going to get a foul or a step back three on him every time. That I think that would be a little bit of a concern. But maybe they can even just put you on the ball on Harden and say, well, hey, Clippers, you don't have enough spacing to beat us up after that. All right. The most important non-star who will affect the outcome of a series.
Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah. He's unbelievably important. He's the only guy who is really a two-way player on this Lakers team.
I mean,
Hachimura has been better, but he's not great. Yeah.
And how much of a two-way player can he be? Like, there's an argument made, like, do you really have to expend a lot of energy guarding him?
He's shot the ball great. Like, and he's been, usually teams are going to put their center on him, and he's been pretty good in that pick and pop as well. But yeah, whether he makes shots or not is going to just be massive. And our stats have always had him first when he's playing with Luka, and now as having some of the most open threes in the league. Yeah, that's a really good one, I would say. Here's another one for you. Steven Adams.
Well, yeah, because they've been playing that 2-center lineup. They've been experimenting with some zone with it that's been pretty effective.
For life.
Yeah. Yep. So is that a look they can get away with against Golden State? Or is it Warriors, with Steph and their passing and whatever, are they just going to get shredded? So that to me is really interesting. And then obviously if Houston advances, is that something they can carry over against a Lakers or a Minnesota?
Yeah, and I think he's really important to their offense, his offensive rebounding, some of that Gortat screening. And certainly I think they can get away with playing him when Steph is on the bench. And they like to go to that zone as well. He, to me, is someone who could really swing this series because I think if Houston can't dominate the offensive glass, I don't think they can win this series. They're just not going to score well enough. And he's such a huge part of that. And getting guys in foul trouble too. Let's see. Yeah, so that would be my pick there. We've hit on a few of these. The best playoff defense is.
I would be inclined to still go with Oklahoma City. I think, Boston has an argument, like with Holiday back and Porzingis back, that they can be that defense again. I would probably have it down to those two. I'm trying to think if there's another, but I think those are probably the two that I would go with. And it's hard for me to pick one among those two. I want to see what it looks like for OKC in the playoffs a little bit before I totally buy. But obviously they were awesome this year.
Well, I thought they were really good last year too. It wasn't. It was their offense that abandoned them a year ago, and I think there is a little bit of a concern. Maybe after seeing them in those two Lakers games where the Lakers scored pretty well on them, OKC had nothing to play for though in those games. So we should keep that in mind, and that they weren't necessarily like game playing for them that hard. But OKC just has so many different things that they can do. They can go to the two bigs. They can switch. They have 5 different guys that they can put on your opposing player. And the one thing you might say is that none of those guys are like, true wing stopper size guys. Dort maybe is the close to that, but he's more of like kind of a bowling ball than having great length. And so that maybe Luka or LeBron can do something against those guys. But we're, of course, 2 rounds away from potentially seeing that series. And the other thing I would say actually is I don't think they have great post defenders. Like Hartenstein, to me, that's the weakest part of his defensive game. But they also they can put Hartenstein on Jokic, and then they still got Chet behind the play as well. They got all these other great help defenders, Caruso. as well. So I think it is the Thunder, like, because especially the way they force turnovers too. Like they just have so many different looks they can go to. This Rockets defense is really good. If they had slightly better centers, I might even say them. And
Right.
then the Celtic, they just the thing is they don't really force that many turnovers. They're more going to just sort of play the math game and contain and let you isolate. But uh, I don't. The Celtics are more just like you kind of get frustrated and you feel like you're doing something, but then you're just not taking efficient shots, and they outscore you on the other end. Um, and I do think like they don't necessarily have that one like unbelievable one-on-one guy, but they have so many
Yeah.
options. Golden State statistically has been an awesome defense now, especially now that they force turnovers, but I still think that they have a few too many places that you can attack. And they have great help defenders behind the play, but they don't necessarily have that great one-on-one stopper. Like seeing what Kawhi and James Harden did to them, I thought
Mm-hmm.
was a little eye-opening. And
Right.
then the Wolves obviously have to get at least something. Like their numbers with Gobert on the floor were great, but they're another team that sort of has places that you can go after. Best playoff offense.
I even though they don't have that one guy, I might still be inclined to go Cleveland. They have so much shooting and playmaking, but they're still big up front. Like you still have to play big against them. But they can also, if they want, they can turn to Hunter and move Mobley to 5 and beat you that way.
Yeah.
So I think they have a ton of options. Obviously, they have crazy shooting; it just stretches you out, um, and multiple places they can go to beat you individually. Like if they have Hunter on the floor with the other four, stars or whatever you want to call them. I mean, Jared Allen's really the only one who's not going to beat you one on one, and he's so effective at everything else. I mean, that is a handful to deal with.
Yeah, I think I would have picked them. I think the Celtics I have a little bit ahead just because we've seen them more in the playoffs and they do have that 5 out that they can go to. But yeah, the Cavs are up there too. It's just that they haven't proven it quite as much. I think they probably have the highest ceiling of any of these teams, honestly. I mean, the Denver Nuggets also have the best one of the top 5 best offensive players ever
Yeah.
and
If
in
I
his
could just
prime.
if I could just select their starting lineup, I mean, I would go with that.
The Denver Nuggets on Dan's adjusted numbers
Hmm.
have a 126.7 offensive rating with the players he projects to be in their playoff rotation on the floor.
Wow. Wow.
With Jokic on the floor this year, they're like a 125. I
Mm.
mean, that's way higher numbers than any of these teams. I mean, there's a lot of teams like well into 120s. I mean, the Lakers have to be in this conversation too. I think they just have a few too many non-threats. But those 3 guys plus playing 5 out most of the time, at least theoretically 5 out, like it easily could be the Lakers too.
Yeah.
OKC, I'm not putting that category just because they're too shade dependent, and I'm not a big enough believer in their shooting. The Clippers, I think, again, don't have enough shooting. I think Harden's too inconsistent. They don't have a 5 out look really that they can go to.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cavs go up to a 124.9 under Dan's system too.
Hmm.
I mean, Indiana is another one. Like they go up to a
Yeah.
122.4 under Dan's system, and they're also going to be going up against the Milwaukee. I mean, a lot of this is going to be who are you going up against too.
Hmm.
There are a lot of good offenses and a lot of good defenses in these playoffs. It's fascinating. All right, let's get to it here.
All right.
Pick a winner. We're going to go through the entire bracket. These don't have to count as official picks
All right.
necessarily. I haven't really gone through each of these series, but I'll give it the way, at least the way I'm leaning right now. Start in the East. We're going to go all the way through to the finals. Cavs versus
Hawks in
Heatles.
5.
Hawks, huh? Okay.
Cleveland Cavaliers in 4 games.
Yep. I'll go with the same. Pacers, Bucks.
Pacers in 5.
Woo! I'm going to pick the Milwaukee Bucks to win this series.
Wow.
I just believe I'm going to ride playoff Giannis one more time.
Playoff Doc.
another guy. Like, I mean, last year there's so many injuries, right? Like this is.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know playoff talk, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, they got mauled by injuries last year. Milwaukee did and took it to 6.
yeah, I don't know how to like this Pacers team just does. I don't know if I'm like counting on Tyrese Halliburton to show up every night in the playoffs yet. I didn't need to see that from him. So I'm gonna go Bucks and actually go Bucks in 7 that series.
Okay.
Knicks Pistons
Knicks in 6.
5 for me. I
Okay.
think they just have so much more talent than this Pistons team. This Pistons team has a lot of holes. The Knicks were really bad against the top teams in the league and really good against everyone else, and the Pistons are not a top team in the league.
Yeah.
Celtics Magic, I got Celtics in 5 because they
Yep.
can never seem to actually do it in 4.
Correct.
Cavs, I got versus Bucks, you got versus Pacers. I'm gonna say Cavs in 6 in that series.
I think Indiana would give them like some kind of competitive series. I'm going to say 6.
Yeah, the Pacers, I mean, they're such an enigma too, because like their offense could just go off. Like they played, I mean, they played against really injured teams, but even in that Celtic series before Halliburton went down,
Yeah.
they made things very difficult. Like their offense was very difficult to stop. So I think Cavaliers Pacers would be an awesome series. If it is Bucks, Lillard would probably be back by then.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's just such a massive variable. But yeah, I got Cavs in 6 there. Celtics Knicks.
I'll say Celtics in 5, even though the regular season matchups would tell you Celtics in 4.
Same for me. Celtics in 5. Cavaliers versus Celtics.
Yeah, this is where it gets tough.
Oh man.
I
Does it get
am
tough? Most people would just snap their fingers and say Celtics.
no, I am like bashing my head, and I think I'm gonna still end up at Celtics. 7 games.
On the road, huh? Yeah.
Doing it on the
I'm gonna
road.
go Celtics in 6 right now.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the one, and this is probably the single most likely conference finals matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Health is going to matter, of course, for both these teams. Jalen Brown, this knee thing, I'm not feeling like amazing about that.
Uh-huh.
And they're going to
Yeah.
really need him in this series. This is one where I reserve the right to change my pick more than anything, because if the if the Cavs roll through the first 2 rounds, no problem, I might very seriously consider picking them. Like I think they're almost underrated right
Mm-hmm.
now, but I want to have a little more certainty, which these matchups really will provide. Thunder versus Grizzlies.
Yeah. I'll say Thunder in 5 versus Memphis, in 4 versus Kings or Mavs.
Agreed. 4-5. Nuggets, Clippers.
Clippers in 6.
Nuggets in 7.
Ooh, okay.
Just can't get on the James Harden train. And also, Kawhi Leonard hasn't made it through a playoff series healthy, even though he's in his best position to do so entering the playoffs since
Yeah.
probably 21. Lakers, Wolves, 3-6.
Lakers in 7.
I'm going to take the Minnesota Timberwolves in
All
6
right.
games.
Okay.
And again, this is what I might change when I really work
All right.
through it with Danny. So I will be fully transparent about that. 2-7. Rockets, Warriors.
Warriors in 6.
Warriors in 7. I think this is like a 51-49er, though. I think these are Nuggets, Clippers, Lakers, Wolves. Yeah.
I'm just worried Houston is going to run out of points.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I ultimately went with the Warriors. All right. Second round.
Mm-hmm.
Thunder versus Nuggets. You have Thunder versus Clippers.
So here's what will happen. They will split the first 2 games. We will get an email the day before game 3 from Clippers PR that says Kawhi Leonard is questionable due to knee soreness, and we will never see Kawhi again. And the Thunder will win in 5.
Oh my God. I really fucking hope that doesn't happen. I mean, this is Kawhi Leonard. We've forgotten about it now. But when he's been healthy, like he's because you're like, oh man, he's 34, 33, 34. Like, how good can he be at this point, even if he's healthy? This guy's an all-time great. Like, he's played at a level when healthy that almost nobody this century has reached. I mean, like, he
Yeah.
to me has been better at his best than Kevin Durant. And I wouldn't even say that it's that close.
Mm-hmm.
And 2019 playoffs and 2017 he was unbelievable until of course he hurt himself, and then some of these regular seasons that he's had, so you're like, oh, 34 years old, like how good can he be? It's like, but this guy's peak was all-time great. Like if he's healthy, it is realistic for him to still be this good at 34, because that's what guys like a Steph or a LeBron or a KD are able to do at that age, and like he is in that class when he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I just hope he can make it through one series, and just like, even if they end up losing, and I think he's got a pretty decent matchup. Aaron Gordon against him is going to be fascinating. But I have the Nuggets winning. I think the Thunder. I'd say the Clippers are actually probably a harder matchup for the Thunder than the Nuggets, particularly if the Clippers make it through against the Nuggets. That'd mean they're playing pretty well.
Yeah.
So if it were Clippers Thunder, I could see that being like a 6-gamer. They also don't have like that guy to guard Kawhi. Like we kind of saw, like there isn't like that huge wing that they can just guard him one-on-one. But I also think the spacing for the Clippers is just too limited against the Thunder. Like their guys can fly around. And then if it is Thunder Nuggets, I think I'd probably go Thunder in 5 in that series. I think they have too many things to throw at Jokic, and they don't have anyone to guard Shea. All right, on the other side of the bracket, you have Lakers, I have Wolves, we both have Warriors. Fuck, am I picking the Warriors to get to the West Finals? God damn it.
I think any of the 4 any of the 4 teams in this bracket could make the conference finals.
Yeah,
and
I agree with you. Any of these series would be awesome.
Yes.
Unless there are injuries.
I just think when I was really looking at Warriors and Lakers right before we did this pod, I just kept thinking that Golden State just has more options, more places to go. Just the Lakers are just so dependent on just bashing you over the head with 3 guys. And I think with Draymond being able to guard and switch, like there's certain actions that you're just not afraid of at all if you're Golden State. So I lean Golden State. I'll say Warriors in 7.
Yeah, I think I would go Warriors. I think actually either the Wolves or Lakers are an easier matchup for the Warriors than the Rockets. Because I think that the Wolves aren't be able to score against Golden State, and they still kind of have Gobert. They've got Julius Randle. There's guys that they can go after. Like the Wolves could easily win that series. I think also the Wolves would be a harder matchup for the Warriors than the Lakers. I think the Warriors match up amazingly well against the Lakers, because the big thing that messes up the Warriors is when the opponent has rim protection. That's why the Lakers have had the upper hand since they got Anthony Davis in those matchups.
Yeah.
And so as soon as that trade was made, I was like, oh, the Warriors actually now have the advantage finally against the Lakers and LeBron, because there just isn't that athleticism and shot blocking that really bothers Steph. There isn't really a one-on-one defender that's really going to bother Steph. And hey, the Warriors can always just go at Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic looked so not ready for prime time against the Warriors when he matched up against the Warriors in the playoffs a few years ago. They completely exploited him too. And like, if you just get Luka on stuff, like you're just completely screwed. If you're going to be double teaming stuff, the Lakers, it's great. The Lakers will love to double team, 15 feet from the basket when they can still pack the paint, but you can't do that against Steph. And so previously they weren't worried about doing that because they always had Anthony Davis available,
Mhm.
but now they don't have that. So if that's the matchup, I would pick the Warriors to actually win that. I mean, probably in 6, just because it's hard for the road team to win in fewer than that. But I would consider that a somewhat like a very solid Warriors pick, and probably
Hmm.
Warriors in 6 over the Wolves too. So I guess I'm very reluctantly doing this because I think they have a 26% chance of doing this, and I'll give everybody else a 24.5% chance
Yeah.
of doing it
Yeah.
to get to the conference finals.
Hmm.
Although I do think Lakers Rockets, I would give the Lakers a pretty big advantage if that's it. But yeah, I guess I got the Warriors going to the conference finals against the Thunder. So Thunder, I guess we both have Thunder Warriors, huh?
Yeah. Thunder in 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. Warriors can't guard Shea. I don't think. Um, there's just a lot of guys that they're not going to be able to play. And then I think the Thunder, they have the rim protection. They have the guys who can chase around stuff. Jimmy's another guy is really going to struggle against rim protection as well. And yeah, I might go Thunder in like an easy 6. Obviously, if the Warriors have made it to that point, they've been playing well, but they're also
Hmm.
going to be exhausted.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think the Thunder just have too much. Thunder Celtics.
This is what I picked before the year. And before the year, I had Boston winning it, I believe. And I think I've seen enough to change my mind. I think OKC had the upper hand in the regular season matchups. They, I think, are likely to be healthier in June. I worry about a lot of Boston's guys, like the cumulative injury probability of any one of those guys, of at least one of those guys being out, I think is enough that it takes something away from Boston.
Yeah. Although if one of those guys is out in the previous series, we're probably talking Cavs Thunder.
Possibly, yeah, yeah. And then I mean, just process wise, like there are reasons to think that they are not assured of winning the championship, but also betting against a 68 win team with an all time scoring margin doesn't feel like the right play to me. So I think the default has to be Thunder unless you come up with a good reason to not say Thunder.
And that reason to me is just the Thunder offense. And I think
Hmm.
that Boston, given a full series, is going to find ways to make things really difficult on Shea and to I mean, the Thunder maybe can just overwhelm them with their defense and forcing turnovers, and they'll have home court. But I think the Celtics just have fewer weaknesses than the Thunder, and that's what it's about. Now, if Kristaps Porzingis is not available, I don't
Right.
know if the Celtics are going to be able to score well enough against the Thunder. Like he's going to need to have a big series, and like he's been healthy recently. Their numbers with him on the floor are not great. I don't put too much on that. I also think Porzingis could be really useful as a rim protector against Shea too, because Shea is going to beat up even the likes of like an Al Horford in a way that say Luka Doncic wasn't able to do in the finals
Right.
last year. And so Shea may end up getting the Celtics out of some of their base stuff and forcing them to put 2 on the ball, which Joe Mazzulla hates. So that would be a total toss-up series to me. But I would go with the Celtics because I think they're a little bit more complete than the
Hmm.
Thunder, even though the Thunder defense plus Shea is obviously a ridiculous formula. And I will say this too. I could easily see the Cavaliers in this series as well.
100%. 100%.
If that were the matchup, I would probably favor the Thunder a little bit more. Um, but again, if the Cavs beat the Celtics, like that's pretty good. But I think the Thunder match up pretty well against the Cavs. We saw that in this, like the Cavs had to play so unbelievably well in the first game against the Thunder, and then
Yeah.
the
And
Thunder ran them off the floor in the
I
second
was
game. I think,
courtside for
yeah,
that second one. Yeah. They just kicked their
yeah.
ass. Yeah.
I mean, is there anything better than being in OKC when they are just like forcing a bunch of turnovers and like getting out in transition and the crowd is just going crazy. Like it's just like standing in front of a tidal wave. It's awesome being in that
Yeah.
arena,
It's
particularly
a
if you're
great,
down near the court.
yeah. No, it's a great place to see a game. Yeah.
All right, well, this was fun. We will be back in a week to talk about the first 2-3 games of these series and completely wipe away all of our picks and get some mulligans. But until then, thanks so much for listening to Hollinger Duncan. And for those of you on YouTube, please leave us a comment, or if you are listening on a public podcast, a review, or even just a thumbs up on YouTube. Much appreciated as well. We'll talk to y'all next time.